My name is David Hobbie. I'm chair of the Greenwood Board of Directors, and it's my honor to welcome you here to this evening of commemoration and celebration of Deb Sherr's 40 years as camp director. It's been wonderful being here at the reunion and at our little reception here. It's been wonderful to see family members of Deb's, alumni, colleagues of all ages and sizes, and all the friend and really the Greenwood family is assembled here tonight. So thank you for being here. Welcome. I've been thinking a lot about Deb's vital role in this amazing institution of Greenwood. And in 1982, Deb succeeded one of the founders of the camp as director of the senior camp. For the last 40 years, she's been at the center of Greenwood. All who touch Greenwood, as campers, faculty, people around the world now attending concerts online, are improved by it. How is it that this place, guided by Deb, has changed so many lives for the better? I think it's because the founders and Deb have figured out what exactly are the ideal growing conditions for the souls and spirits of young musicians. Greenwood's garden has 4 main conditions that Deb, as gardener, has created and sustained through her vision, her empathetic leadership, and plain old hard work. I think of our rich and intense classical music tradition as like the sun, constantly shining its insight and inspiration on all of us. The amazing Greenwood faculty is like those who gently guide the plants as they grow. Plants at Greenwood are also afforded space to grow. We trust them and we give them that space. And the rich soil is the community that Deb has sustained, where what in other places is an individualistic, competitive struggle for musical superiority has become a group of young people and faculty who cheer on and encourage each other, who value playing together and sincerely above everything else. I want to give you a small sense of what it was like to start to join that community. In my first day at Greenwood, as one does, I auditioned for the assembled faculty in a room in the main house. And I was probably not a very good violinist at that point, and so I had selected as my audition piece a Mozart sonata. And it starts like this. Now, at that point, the first violin part, violin part really doesn't, it turns into the accompaniment. But the assembled faculty and Deb started singing the melody so that I could accompany them with the melody. And that of course, that wonderful generosity and sense that I was no longer in an intensely competitive situation was a wonderful introduction to Greenwood, the Greenwood experience, which did in fact change my life and set me on a path of incredibly rich path of exploring music for the rest of my life, which has sustained me and continues to sustain me. One of the greatest privileges I've had as chair of the board is to see behind the scenes at camp, to hear about the compassion and intelligence with which staffing and repertoire choices are made, and to see the hundreds of logistical and artistic challenges that Deb and the other directors have overcome. I want to finish with a quote from the Bible, and I've been thinking about how Deb has served the vision of the founders and enhanced it and furthered it. And the quote is, "His Lord said unto him, Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will make thee ruler over many things." I give you Deb Sherr, ruler of our hearts.
This is Bunny Little, a photograph taken by Joe Schaff. And he gave me this photograph, and it says on the back, please do not make copies of the photograph without any permission from Joe Schaff. He only made about 3 of these. And I just want to quickly say, first of all, David, thank you so much. That was so beautiful. And David has taken on an enormous responsibility as head of the board and has taken on with such grace and such strength and such leadership. We will go forward also with Becca and Debbie without any problem. But I have to bring up Bunny. I've been thinking about her so much. She is my only predecessor in this position. You all know that, right? 50 years. She and Ruth MacGregor founded this place. I have to say, first of all, that Ruth's son is here, David. Bunny's son-in-law, Bernie Rubenstein, is here as well. Bunny and Ruth just got it. They just knew what they were doing. Yes, I picked it up and it became partially, me doing it, but everything about Greenwood that is deep and real and important started with Bunny and Ruth. And there's so many people here to thank, I can't even start, but I just want to say, hail Bunny.
Speaking of continuity and continuation, our next event in the commemoration is a duet from Becca Fischer and Debbie.
Thank you so much, David, and thank you, Deb, for everything. You'll be hearing a lot of thank yous this whole evening and this whole summer. But I want to personally thank you for giving us the opportunity to play together for the first time. We thought it's so hard to know what to do, right? To thank somebody, and fortunately we have music. And so Debbie and I will be playing the first movement of a violin duo by Joseph Bologne, Chevalier de Saint-Georges, a piece in B flat. And this composer is a French composer known for his phenomenal musical work, but also as a fencer, right? And Debbie and I will not be dueling, right, on stage, at least I hope not. But we will be enjoying playing together.
lovely. Before we go any further, I did want to acknowledge that the other director of Junior Music Camp is here, Sally. So there's one person who has spanned the time that Deb has been here more than perhaps any other individual at Greenwood, and that's Brian Alverson, who was a camper with me, and then a parent, and then a board member, and most recently chair of the board as well. So Brian will say a few words.
So David called me and he said, "Brian, I want you to say a few words," and I'm always talking, so he knew I would do it. But it was sort of cataclysmically difficult for me to come up with something to say to encompass the sort of enormous, I'm going to try and get through this without being overly weepy, but to encompass a way to describe 40 years of impact on this community is impossible. And to find a way to fully describe the impact you've had on me, on everyone else here, and on the hundreds of other thousands of people who've been through this camp is impossible. I wanted to say a few words, though, and I wanted to start by talking about a man, George Bridgetower. And I'm loath to do this because I'm not a musicologist, and Norman, if wherever you are, is probably going to scowl at me and say, "Brian, you got the story wrong." There he is. But I'm going to try. Bear with me, my friend. He was born in 1778. And I don't know how many people have heard of him, but he's an interesting dude. He was of African descent, and he was a violinist. He was born in Poland, and he started training, and he became, was he not born in Poland? I believe he was born in Poland. Maybe I'm wrong. Ken just nodded.
Just shaking my head.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So, but the point is, he was a profoundly impactful violinist. In fact, he became so famous for his musical skill that Beethoven dedicated his Kreutzer Sonata to this young man. Now, so this guy was a fantastic fiddler. And so you can look at his career, an African of descent minority person in the 1700s becoming one of the premier violinists in Europe. Kind of amazing. And yet, who do we have to thank? Haydn. And I want to get to that because Haydn is the one who figured him out. He was the kid who was in Haydn's studio playing for the first time, and Haydn said, "That kid." And he started his career. And that wasn't just the first time. You can go into the weeds on this one, man. Google Haydn's students. They are many and very interesting. There was a guy named John Calcott who wrote glees. I didn't know what a glee was until I started reading about him. There were all these amazing people who learned from Haydn. One of the famous ones, of course, is Mozart. We all know Mozart. And he was very influenced by Haydn, I think, as we all know. He named 6 of his quartets after Haydn. He loved the man. I want to read a quote from a book about Haydn. At a private party, a new work of Haydn was being performed. Behind Mozart, there were a number of other musicians present, among them a certain man who was never known to praise anyone but himself. He was standing next to Mozart and found fault with one thing after another. For a while, Mozart listened patiently. When he could bear it no longer, and the fault finder once more conceitedly declared, "I would not have done that," Mozart retorted, "Neither would I, but do you know why? Because neither of us could have thought of anything so appropriate." Now, he was defending his mentor, his teacher, in a way that was powerful, and he wasn't the only one to do it. Beethoven did this too. 3 months before Haydn's death, at his 77th birthday party, sort of remarkably, Beethoven, at the age of 30-something, got down on bended knee and kissed his hand in front of the entire assembly, as a way of showing him the ultimate credit for the master he was. And what I'm asking us to do for a moment, because when we think of Haydn, I think of Opus 77, number 2, slow movement, because my gosh, what a beautiful piece. We zilched that last night. Beautiful, stunning repertoire, incredible pieces he wrote. But perhaps, I would argue, the most impactful thing that Papa Haydn did. Do you know why he's called Papa Haydn? The musicians of his orchestra named him that because they revered him so highly. He created a culture in Europe of learning of community, of love, of music, and I would suggest, politely, that perhaps that was his greatest accomplishment. And now we turn the page here to Deb. And I'm getting there. I think we can all look to great musicians and think of the amazing accomplishments they've had, and there are those in the room, one of whom I will introduce shortly, and I promise it will be shortly, who have done incredible, amazing things on their instruments. But to me, in my humble opinion, the greatest thing is a teacher, is someone who mentors you through your youth and creates many who follow after them and who achieve great things. And I can think of a few people that have been under Deb who I wanted to briefly mention and are not here, and they don't know I'm going to do this. And so if they're watching online, I'm so sorry. I want to talk a little bit about one of my best friends in the world. I will be spending time with him next week on an island. His name is Ben Gregg. He was one of my dearest friends. We met here when we were 14, and we thought it was really cool to take manly photos on top of hay bales in the lower field. But one thing that Ben Gregg did was he was an exemplary leader, and Deb saw that. And he was an exemplary man, and Deb saw that. And he was a not very good cellist.
And he broke his elbow.
And he broke his elbow playing baseball. But that's not the thing I wanted to talk about, Dan, because she took this guy who was not that good a cellist and said, I want him to be a counselor. And we were counselors together eventually. And he was an extraordinary counselor. And he helped preach what she wanted this place to be. And he did amazing things. But one of the most examples of Deb's genius was Ben was, he was playing in this camp of extraordinary players, and he was such an incredible human. And in his final year, I think, I'm reading into it maybe, she wanted to give him a little gift. And she gave him the slow movement of the Dvorak American Quartet as his last piece. And you know what? I've never heard it played so beautifully, so badly. And I would take that, Ben, if you're listening, I probably are, I would take that performance over any in the world.
It made me cry.
It made me cry too, and I'm crying thinking about it. And it's those beautiful moments. And so then what did Ben do? Ben, who's a genius, and I'm telling you he's a genius, and I think all of his friends would agree with me, went on to become a teacher. And he teaches social studies at a school for music, the Walnut Hill School, where he's been for, 30 years, teaching kids and helping kids become more well-rounded and understanding kids so they can understand the world within the context of their musical, theatrical, and ballet performances. He is having profound impact, and there is no doubt that what he became was a result of what Deb instilled in him during those summers here. I'll take another one, and that's me. And I apologize for waxing a little bit rhapsodic about myself. My favorite thing I ever did at Greenwood was a Brahms piano quartet. It was the Brahms C minor, and I was assigned the first movement. It was the only time I had Deb as my coach. She was the best coach I ever had, period. And we played, I thought we played it great. But I want to talk about two of the people in that group beside me. One was a cellist, remarkable young kid, who I think a lot of people here know, Marika Hughes. And she lit into that. We were best friends. And we loved that piece, and we tackled it, and Marika went on to become a phenomenal performer in New York City, does the coolest stuff. She's still very much in touch with the camp. She's a real leader in the arts in New York City. And there's no doubt in my mind that was because of Deb and the community that Deb brought. Another one is someone Deb hasn't thought about in 30 years. It's a violist named Liza Scriggins. I don't know if you're out there, Liza. I think she lives in Canada in Calgary.
I've thought of her because she got in touch with me last year about her child.
There it
Wants
is.
to come here.
Of course they do. Liza Scriggins was a timid young woman. She was very much an introvert. She was very much afraid of performing. And Deb gave her the first movement of the Brahms C minor piano quartet. And you know that viola part. Dun, 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 fortissimo. And she just laid into her, and by the end of that week, she was playing with such ferocity. It was like a new person was created, and she's gone on to be a teacher of the viola, and now she wants to send her kid here. For me personally, I was not good enough to be a professional violinist, and that's because I didn't have the will to practice. So I did something far easier, which was go to medical school. and now I am in the process of finding myself having to completely uproot my life. I've talked to some people about this, and this is the year it's happening, and it's been a remarkably poignant year for me. Not only is my youngest daughter going to have her final summer at Greenwood this summer, which is going to be a big thing, ending with Deb, which I think is something beautiful. But also, I'm leaving my job. I'm quitting what I'm doing, which is being a hospital administrator largely, and I'm going back to what I love. I'm going to be a teacher, and I'm going to be the vice chair of education at a children's hospital. And yeah, I'm not teaching music, I'm teaching medicine, but this is going to be my job. 75% of my job is teaching now. Why am I doing that? It's because of Deb. No other reason. I told myself I wouldn't cry. I'm going to make it through this. There are people in your life who change what you do. Deb has changed 2,000 children. To put together to introduce our next speaker, and I want to talk a little bit briefly about this book. It's written by Robert Freeman. It's about Gil Kalish. It's just come out. Is Rayma here?
Rayma's over behind.
Rayma, how much are we charging for this book?
$25.
$25. I hope you will all buy a copy. Gil has kindly offered to sign copies for you, so they're for sale over there. Every penny goes towards the scholarships at Greenwood Music Camp, so please buy a copy. He's donated these books for us to raise funds, so thank you, Joe.
I just want to say that one of the reasons we have this book, Bob got in touch with me to say that I had to point out that in the first chapter he talks about how you two met at Greenwood.
And in fact, the book is dedicated to Greenwood.
And it's dedicated to him.
But I want to introduce Gil, who I am not friends with, and we've met today for the first time. But I've heard all about him, and he's an incredibly well-known, nationally recorded artist. He's recorded with all kinds of famous people you know, and I can't list them all, and he's been nominated for the Grammys 3 times, and the accolades go on and on. And that's not his greatest accomplishment. His greatest accomplishment was the performance of the Brahms A major second piano quartet right here at Greenwood when he was a kid. Yeah, isn't that the piano quartet?
Not
Brahms?
A major.
It's not A major?
Yeah,
it is. Oh, Deb.
Oh, sorry.
It is an A major. But anyway, whatever. That was his greatest, and it was no doubt barefoot. And with that happy news, I introduce Gil Kalish, who will perform for us.
So I was a 12-year-old, burned-out young man, and my mother took me kind of kicking and screaming to apply to this place. And she took me to Ruth MacGregor's apartment, this incredibly elegant, civilized, lovely person, and that's who I played for, and she accepted me to Greenwood. And in fact, I played my first chamber music performance ever with her, which was Beethoven's Opus 1, number 3 trio, the second movement. And I predate Deb, except that all of my kids were here, the 3 of them, and now 3 grandchildren have also been here and seen what this place is about. So it really changed my life. There's no question about it. Coming here to see what joy there can be in being a musician and making music with other people. You know, it's a fairly lonely thing to be a pianist sitting in a practice room by yourself, and you don't really understand the joy of music until you, to me, chamber music is the high point of what our art can make, and playing with other people of like mind is such a privilege, and that's the way I've been lucky enough to spend my life. So just a few remarks. There are two people here who I went to camp with. There's Pete Neumann, right there in the front row, and there's Sally. They were campers with me at that time, amazingly. And then to mention one other, Bob Freeman. So Bob Freeman is the author of this book. He and I were here for 3 or 4 years, 1947 through 50. And we bonded and became best friends. And we went on to we took different paths in this world. And he became the director of the Eastman School, and then New England Conservatory, and then a dean at University of Texas. And I went on to other different things. And when he retired from this deanship at Texas, I think he was looking for something to fulfill his endless curiosity, and he decided that he should write a book about me. His idea maybe was a little different than what I had in mind. I'd always thought over these years, gee, I have a lot of nice stories, interesting stories that I've lived through that deal with music, with my family, with life in general. And wouldn't it be nice if I had the time to sit down and write about some of them? And I sort of realized that I never would have that time. And so when Bob said he wanted to write about me, he wanted to write about me in a different way than I felt about myself. He says, American Pianist is the title of the book. And he kind of thought of me as somebody who exemplified what musicians in the future will have to do in their life to make a way in the profession. That's not good enough to just sit in a practice room and learn your solo repertoire. And so that was his idea, and we sort of made a conglomeration of that in this book. And it, as was said, it is dedicated to this place. This place, without any question, changed my life. I've said that many times, and it's absolutely true. It took me on a path that I followed ever since. And these great ladies who started this place, Bunny Little and Ruth MacGregor, were so brilliant and farsighted and kind and insightful. It was a magnificent experience to be around them. And another name that hasn't been mentioned, Helen Rice. Helen Rice was another one of these great ladies. And I remember she was a good tennis player. And so I thought I was a pretty good tennis player. And I remember competing with her, or playing with her, and I would mess up a shot and she would say, "Nice try, Gil." And she always beat me, no matter what, all the while telling me how well I had done. So anyway, I have incredible memories of this place, both through myself and through all my children, two of whom are here today, and two of my dear grandchildren also. So it's a privilege to be here for this occasion. So what I thought I'd play was a movement from the Concord Sonata of Charles Ives. So that may seem strange, because it's a monumental work and very complex and in some ways hard to absorb. There are 4 movements in it. The title of it is Concord Mass, 1840 to 1860. The third movement is called the Alcotts. It's a kind of dedication to the Alcott family in Concord. The other movements are to Hawthorne, to Emerson, to Thoreau. But this is to the Alcotts family. And Ives was a very unusual person. I'm sure many of you know about him, but he was somebody who wrote his music on the side, in a way. He was an important, believe it or not, insurance executive. And he would take the train from Danbury every day, ride on the train, ride on the way back. He was basically unknown. And he wrote, until about 1921, his works are from the late 19th century till about 1921. And he was frail and ill at that time, and he stopped composing. And he lived into the 50s. So from being unrecognized, and all of a sudden, in 1938, this piece was performed in New York, and the critics went wild, like, this is the great American composer and the great American sonata. And from then on, he had more kind of prominence. People like Leonard Bernstein would perform his works. He won a Pulitzer, and he kind of objected to all of that, that all of a sudden they appreciate me, when he was really terribly underappreciated. But anyway, this Alcotts movement is quite gentle. And he was a writer too. He wrote particularly about this piece. So he wrote about each movement, and I'll read a little bit about what he wrote about the Alcotts, because it's quite touching, I think. So Concord village itself reminds one of that common virtue lying at the height and root of all the Concord divinities. As one walks down the broad arched street, he comes presently beneath the old elms overspreading the Alcott house. No more elms. We've lost them. It seems to stand as a kind of homely but beautiful witness of Concord's common virtue. Let's see what else. You'll hear in this movement, it'll even begin with a quote from the Fifth Symphony of Beethoven, and you'll hear it quite often in this movement and in the piece. Really, literally 100 times it's quoted in different contexts. He considered that a kind of one of the great works that we should aspire to, that aspires to celebrate the divinity of man, the spiritual divinity of man. And the Alcotts, he would say, played at the Beethoven Fifth, on their little spinet, the Alcott girls. Okay, so we won't try to reconcile the music sketch of the Alcotts with much besides the memory of that home under the elms, the Scotch songs and the family hymns that were sung at the end of each day. Though there may be an attempt to catch something of that common sentiment which we have tried to suggest above, a strength of hope that never gives way to despair, a conviction in the power of the common soul, which, when all is said and done, may be as typical as any theme of Concord and its transcendentalists. So it seems to me fitting for this place, which somehow reminds me of that, that aspiration. So here it is.
we all might need a moment to catch our breath after that magnificent performance. Thank you. This is the time, however, that we've set aside for anyone in the audience to come forth, come over here. You don't have to stand exactly on the X, but come out to the stage here and share a memory or story or say something to Deb. Is there anybody here who is ready to do that?
No.
Yeah.
So, back in about, let's see, when was it? 1980, 1979, Peggy, by the way, was a camper with you, my wife, Peggy Means McIntosh, an ex-viola player now. We moved from Denver to Boston when I took a job at Boston Children's Hospital in 1979. And in 1980, or maybe it could have been 79, I got a call from Bunny Little. And she said, would you be on the board of Greenwood Camp? And I had never been so flattered in my life, because I was a camper in 1952, and then a counselor for 2 years, and I taught piano here in 1957 and 59. For 2 years I taught piano. And so I said yes, and went to some of the board meetings then, and not long after that, Bunny said, well, Dwight and I are retiring, and but we have somebody to take over the senior camp. And the junior camp had started, and Ruth MacGregor was staying on for that. But this woman named Deborah was mentioned by her, and I just wanted to say that I think of it now as a moment of genius on the part of a woman who was a genius, Bunny Little, an unusual genius. And this was one of her greatest acts of genius, was the supporting of Fischer.
Hi, I'm David MacGregor. My mom, as mentioned, was one of the co-founders of the camp. It started at our home in Isle of Mont, Vermont in 1933, so yes, this is year number 90. But of course, for the first 50 years, the heart and soul of Greenwood was Bunny. And so it was with trepidation that some of us who had been campers and counselors here heard in 1982 that Bunny was retiring and leaving the camp to a Deborah Sherr, of whom most of us had never heard, and who had even been a camper here. Could this new woman, we wondered, keep the magic? Because with the help of a few key people, dear Sally and Joe Schaff, Bunny had weaved a magic blend amongst music, nature, good food, and a caring, supportive community that was just like family. Campers arrived wide-eyed and they left wet-eyed. And I can attest that the worse you played on Saturday night, the louder the applause was. Well, so it's been 40 years, and I think it's very easy to make the case that Deb's 40 years for this place have been at least as consequential as Bunny's 50. The musicianship is obviously off the charts. Everybody plays better now than any of us did, or most any of us did. The starting of new music, bringing in new composers and playing their music was something that Bunny didn't do. And perhaps most importantly, the spirit, which has always been the essence of Greenwood. The spirit is still just marvelous. But I want to focus on something else. A place, like a person, ages, and the place must be preserved. And Bunny and Dwight got this place in 1939. It was pretty young. They had the main house, they had the barn, they had the pool. And some additions were made over time. But much of the maintenance of the place was, and I admit to being an accomplice, pretty much baling wire and duct tape. Dwight was very good at it. But I think we should look and see what Deb has caused to happen since. We're in one place. The exquisite acoustics of the old barn didn't solve the problem that it was ADA non-accessible. And I will say it was also backside non-accessible. The hard benches there got really harder because Deb's Saturday nights got really longer. And so we have this place. We have the new kitchen, which has allowed us to serve more people, and only somebody as insane as Glig Meekum would be willing to have cooked in that old kitchen. We have the director's cabin, we have the new boys' cabins, we have a spate of practice cabins. The most elegant pas de trois in the last couple of years was taking Villa-Lobos and putting it where Uncle Tom's cabin was, and taking Sally's Gardens and putting it where Villa-Lobos was, so that we could have 2 new dorms and or faculty housing down below the old hutch. So there's all of that. And then in addition to that, there is restoration. A new foundation for the old barn, a new foundation for the house, the restoration of the view over the wall, the restoration of the wall, the restoration of the sunken garden. Now, all of this costs a lot of money, and Deb really never asked people for money. She just made the place continue to be so wonderful that alums and parents and grandparents gave. And so now as she comes to transition out, she is leaving a Greenwood that is both physically and fiscally fit for Becca as she starts her 60 years. So I would ask that we rise and give 40 huzzahs to Deb the Builder.
Is this the right spot? My name is Andy Langowitz. I was a camper here from 1970 to 73. And in my memory, the peak of that arc was 1972, which was 50 years ago. Now, I was not personally influenced by Deb because this was the Bunny and Ruth era. Deb was a girls' counselor then. And as a boy, I didn't really interact with her very much. But for me, Greenwood was a remarkable place that you've heard talked about. It was where I began to mature as a human being. It was where I began to mature as a musician, as a flute player. I was really awful the first time. I don't know why Bunny let me in. It was a place where I found my tribe, the people who know and love what it is to play chamber music with other people. That's really the core. So that's me. But then over the years, I reconnected, started coming to reunions, was asked to do a stint on the board, and this was during the Debby era. I took a break off the board and was then asked to be chair of the board at one point. And I said to myself, you know, do I know that this place is still what it was, that I really want to serve on the board? And I said to Deb, you know, Hal asked me, so what will it take to make you agree to be on the board, be the chair? And I said to Deb, I want to come visit the camp and just see what it feels like today. It's been decades, you know. And she said, oh, come to a concert. I said, no, I don't want to come to a concert. I know that, I've heard concerts. I just want to be here, a fly on the wall. And she said, okay. And she allowed me to come and just hang out one Wednesday or Thursday afternoon at the camp. And I just sat there like a fly on the wall, listening to the kids talk about what they were thinking and doing. And wonder of wonders, it really was the same. It still had the magic. And that doesn't happen automatically. That happened because of you. And I've had many opportunities over the decades to kind of touch and feel and see if that was still the case. And it always has been. And again, that doesn't go without saying. And Deb gets the credit for that. And it wasn't the same as Bunny and Ruth's time. And I'm sure Becca's era won't be exactly the same as yours. But I have full confidence that the magic has lived on and will continue to live on. And thank you, Debbie.
My name is Norman Fischer, and I freely admit that I never came to Greenwood. We grew up in Michigan. Interlochen was our family home for music and everything, but I just think this is such a beautiful evening, and it's so incredible to be honored Deb. I just want to talk about, and I wind up being in a situation, I'm a faculty member at Rice University, I was at Oberlin for many years, and at the Tanglewood Music Center for almost 40 years. My deepest love is chamber music, always has been. And I was a member of the Concord Quartet, and when I came to be on the Tanglewood faculty, my colleague, Gilbert Kalish, who was an inspiration then and still is today, and by the way, the book is amazing, I've read it. It's fantastic and wonderful, and all the stuff about the family too, I just adore. But I think Gil and Deb and I may be the only ones in this room that really understand what it's like to put a chamber music series together, to put players together, to have some kind of a knowledge about the chemistry of people, what each person needs, and another miracle. And keep saying, how did Deb know that these kids were made to play together? How did she know that this was the repertoire that they were supposed to play? How did she know that this was going to be such a magical experience? And I just adore her, and I just am so filled with admiration. But through the years, it's been great. And I'd just like to say to Gil that one of the reasons why Becca is here is because of Gil. We came into the carriage house at the Tanglewood Music Center grounds, and I was walking in, and Becca was there carrying her violin, and he looked at her and he says, how old are you? She says, I'm 8, something like that. Just playing. He says, when are you going to Greenwood? And we said, what's Greenwood? And so he waxed rhapsodically about this, and we found out more about it. And as soon as we could get Becca to audition for Greenwood, she came, and that was the beginning of our saga, both with Becca and also with our other daughter Abby, who's actually here longer, more summers than Becca, but just we adore the place. We adore Deb, who has been through this and transformed it, as other people have said. So grateful to you. Thank you so much, Deb.
Gilbert at the Ives was just wonderful, just so moving. Again, I'm a weeper anyway, so. But I'm Bernie Rubenstein, Bunny's son-in-law, and Anne was my wife over 60 years, and Dwight never cared for me. I was a klutz. The first time I came up to Greenwood, he said, well, you know, one of the lawns needs mowing, and I had never worked an electric mower before in my life, and he said, you know, here, and I couldn't get it started, obviously, and he had to start it from me, and he said, you do the soccer field. So I went toward the soccer field, and never having played soccer, the lawn looked pretty good, as if it didn't need mowing. So I took it down to another field with stones and big weeds, and promptly ruined the lawnmower. But Bunny, I played the oboe, and Bunny liked my playing, and so she always sort of encouraged Anne in our relationship, so that was a long story. But through Bunny and through Anne, I got to know Greenwood. We were counselors here. I coached the Winds for many years, and after Nathan retired, I had the privilege of conducting the orchestra for a number of years. Andy, some of you played with me. And I got to love Greenwood so much. And, you know, I remember evenings after Saturday night concert where Ruth and Bunny would be sitting down, Sally sometimes there, you know, going over the players with such detail, you know, trying to figure out the configuration of the music for the following week. And it was so sensitive and so thoughtful. You know, no computers, just a big piece of paper, and who would go with this person, who would go with that person. And so to know part of this history over these many, many years is just wonderful. And I just know that Bunny would be so proud of you, Dad. She would.
That's right. I have a very long speech. I am the lucky person to be Deb's husband.
Oh.
And we met 32 years ago, around there. And I was really impressed with Greenwood, having been a child who went to Music and Art High School, and the really good kids went to Greenwood. Of course, I didn't even try. And so I came here to hang out with Deb, because we had started a community music center in Northampton, and that was such a labor of love and a great friendship. And I came here, and honestly, I was pretty intimidated until I started to see inside Greenwood through Deb's eyes. The first was, she really loved your pranks. In case you don't know,
She never told me that.
The chickens.
in case you don't know, Brian went to a neighbor's farm, got a chicken and set it into the girls' cabin, and they freaked out. And Deb loved it. A few years later, Ben Siegelman, as a counselor, and his cohorts wrapped the girls' cabin in saran wrap. And Deb loved it. And then a few years later, Deb said, nobody's doing pranks anymore. So if any of you have any influence over them, they should do some pranks. Who counts lives in decades? Right? This woman just has tenacity, and look at what it's brought to the world. And everybody's comments tonight are so on the mark. I'd like to comment on another really intimate detail of Greenwood, which is the breakfast bowls. In the early days of Greenwood, you got a bowl, right? And into that bowl would go cream of wheat, or oatmeal, or Glenn's greasy pancakes, or sausage, or French, but that's all you got was a bowl. And here's this wonderful place, and you get a bowl. Ironically, that bowl was the same bowl I got when I was in jail. I was in jail for having done some civil rights stuff in the 60s, and I spent a night, and they gave us breakfast, and it was the same bowl.
We still have them.
And you still have it.
Yes.
I knew I had arrived. You know, I was an outsider. I didn't have the same connection that you all have. I knew I had arrived when Sunday nights, which used to be barbecues out behind the old director's cabinet, Deb let me cut the watermelon. I knew I was in. It was very important.
He's the only one I would allow to have that knife.
Deb would occasionally use my repair skills. Occasionally, most of the time. And one time she said, there's something wrong in the boys' cabin. Could you go down and take care of it? I had not been in this cabin filled with 14-year-old hormones. And she said, by the way, where are your boots? And I got there, and the place was a mess. The toilets were all backed up. And I learned at that point that there was a similarity between stuffed up toilets and strep throat. Because Deb used to also ask me to check for strep throat.
Bill's done a lot of work at the camp.
Yeah. But it gave me a new role in life. Forget all my professional training. I now had a role in Greenwood. I was the fan man. And when Deb and I traveled, and we traveled a lot, we'd hear in the airport, Deb! Bangkok, Bali, anywhere in Europe, Deb! And big hugs like tonight. And then the person would inevitably turn to me and said, and what do you do? And I said, I carry Deb's cello. So there's a lot of that stuff. I can't believe it's been so many years. And, you know, there's one thing about you, Deb, sure. You got heart. You really do. Congratulations.
I want to mention tonight, if you haven't had a chance, if you just thought of something, or you're on your way out the door, oh, I know what I should have said. There is a replica of the new barn sitting on the table over there that one of our board members and
Brian's going to show it.
faculty spouses has lovingly created for the purpose of people can drop notes to Deb in there.
Oh my goodness.
Right, there's a mail slot, Brian, turn around. Mail slot.
And when it's less humid, you'll be able to open the door. So I just want to also say to everybody who's tuning in, you can send a letter to Greenwood this summer and put on it care of letters to Deb, and it will get put into that mailbox. So, which is going to be great. Okay, I'm going to stand on the spot, and I'm going to put on glasses because I went to Greenwood quite a few years ago. So, okay, and I'm going to try to get through this. Deb, I have to say, this is the first year I've been to Reunion since my last year as a counselor in '88. And I have to say, there are a lot of us here who it's our first time at Reunion, and we're here because of you. So, you know, you're you, we love you. So I'm going to just start with that. So Deb, I want to thank you for being such an important part of my life. My mother was a Greenwood parent for 10 years, and she was always right, you know, well, I'm a Greenwood parent. She was right on saying that. And my sister Tanya and I just loved our time here with you. And I'm thrilled this evening, on behalf of the Board of Directors, to announce the creation of the Deborah Sherr Commissioning Award. Deb knows a little bit about this, because obviously it was going to have her name on it, so we needed some input from her. The award's been created to widen the field of exceptional chamber music and make it more available to all who enjoy new music. So every 2 years, Greenwood will commission a composer to write a 6 to 10 minute long work for a chamber ensemble. And that will change every year, depending on what Deb wants. Each awardee will receive $7,500 plus housing and travel, and will be in residence at camp in advance of the premiere to work with the campers performing their work. Our goal is to create an endowed fund of $200,000 so that this award can continue for 40 years and produce 20 new chamber works. Deb, you've enriched the lives of so many. It's our hope that our entire Greenwood community will contribute to this fund by going to the Greenwood website and clicking on the green support button up in the right. And there is now an option to donate any amount to the Deb Sherr Commissioning Award. It's really that simple. It is, as of this evening, we've actually done a little quiet fundraising behind the scenes. We've actually raised just over 20% at $42,150. Wow. So Deb has actually invited composer Rina Ismail to be the recipient of the award. And don't look at my notes. Okay. Still stand on the other side of the, there you go. But Deb, Rina is not going to be the first recipient of the Deborah Sherr Commissioning Award. I am thrilled to tell you that the Board of Directors has commissioned a new string quartet that will have its world premiere this evening. Then later this summer, it will be heard at senior camp on July 23rd. Deb, we are thrilled to present you with the first page of a new work by the inaugural Deborah Sherr Commission awardee, Emmy and Golden Globe nominated Greenwood alum, Ronit Kirchman. Not my book. I'm sorry. That's okay. I know it's all. So this is the first page of the score, and Ronit's inscribed it. And then on the back, we've had all of the board. And we have a few more people who are going to send little notes that we can tape on the back because they couldn't be here. And I had a hard time picking out the matte color, but
so I saw Ronit here and I said, why did you come all the way from Los Angeles?
Well, for you.
And she said, oh, for you.
It's true, it is for you.
I have no idea. Oh my gosh. She's incredible. There couldn't be a more wonderful honor.
Could you grab a hold of this?
Yes,
And
we're going to let everybody see. There could not be, come on, Emma, you can do it.
I got this.
Paul's got it.
Paul's got it.
Wow, there could not be a more wonderful honor, seriously, to somehow make chamber music grow in the world. Have it be connected to me is the greatest honor I can think of. So I thank the Greenwood board and Monica and Becca and Debbie and everybody else who was involved in this for creating this idea, which they know me.
The last thing I will add is that after the premiere at camp this summer, it's available for anybody to play. There's no restriction that this has to be done for Greenwood. There's no, oh, I've just forgotten my words there. Exclusivity, thank you. Been out of work for a little while. So you can go, we will make sure people know how to find the piece later this summer, and so that you can zilch it, and you can program it, and, you know, it would be great for anybody who plays it to send a program into Greenwood, if you're performing it live with, and we just love to know that it's happening, so.
Oh, boy, so wonderful. Ronit, when were you a camper?
90 and 91, and then counselor 95.
I still talk about her to the campers every year. They don't know her name even, and she doesn't know that I do this, but we play a game called Murder. And one year she was murdered and she did something terrible. And I tell them every year, don't do that. So I've never forgotten her. And now she's an incredible composer.
Yeah.
What's a balance?
I'll tell you. So, who's a camper to Ben? I'm going to tell the story, and you can say you meant it.
I think the iPads are worse than worrying about the old stands going.
Really?
The stands going in the past for me. Ronnie, how did you go?
Talk a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, I'm very grateful, beyond words, just to be in the position of being able to say thank you through music, because truly words do not suffice. You know, when I was thinking about what I could say to introduce the piece and to express in words how Greenwood and you have shaped my life, you know, the words don't come, but the music does, so thank you, Deborah. I hope that you can feel those resonances. And I know that there are countless, I mean, every single person who came through here, that's like the radiance of your vision and your presence and the love. And I have to say that it's just a miracle of a place, you know, a place to really live, walk the walk, and know that music and love can be a path to follow. You know, so when you know, the regular world, I've described this place as Hogwarts for chamber music. You kind of have a special something to carry with you when you go out into, you know, the tougher world out there, I think. So I guess I will just introduce the piece. It's entitled A Greenwood Quartet. There are 3 movements. The first is Big Field Sunrise. The second movement is Adolescence. And the third movement is Barn Dance. I'd also love to share the inscription in the composer's note, a few words. So the inscription is for Deborah Sherr. Time is all present for us in an instant. I had the great good fortune of attending Greenwood Music Camp in Western Massachusetts as a violinist and a camper in high school, and later in college as a counselor. Greenwood changed my life immeasurably for the better. It helped me open to my future as a musical artist, and it gave me soul friendships that will last a lifetime. The spirit of this place radiates inspiration, community, artistry, friendship, and love. Over the course of 40 years, this spirit has been intertwined, enriched, and amplified by Deborah Sherr, who, as the camp's director, translated the dream into reality every summer for young musicians, their teachers, and their families. The cumulative energy of her gift is truly overflowing, and I know it will continue to bear fruit for many, many years to come. It's a deep honor to create this inaugural composition for the Deborah Sherr Commissioning Award. I wrote this piece as an homage to Greenwood as I've known it, a magical and nurturing refuge which gives sustenance to the musical traveler on the way to the wide world. So, and Mazel Tov, Deb, on your next phase of the journey. So without further ado, the world premiere of a Greenwood quartet will be performed by the Greenwood Faculty Quartet. Featuring Rebecca Fischer and Hye-Young Yoon on beyond violins, Monica Davis on viola, and Greg Beaver on cello. Enjoy.
This is not part of the piece.
actually 3 of us did play in a professional string quartet together for 18 years, so it's so fun to play with Monica. And for this event, to celebrate Deb. And there have been lots of mentions, I'm sure even more than what I heard because I was backstage tuning, but about Deb's love for particular pieces and Deb's love for specifically slow movements. And when I was a camper, one of the goals of any performance really, but particularly slow movement, was to make Deb cry, right? So
This summer is going to be really easy.
I know. We're going to load it up for you. It's going to be great. In any case, when I was, I believe, 14, I had, my very best friend, one of my very best friends, Colleen Jennings, who's now on the faculty of senior camp, was playing the slow movement of Mozart, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart's dissonant string quartet, K465. And she was playing first violin, and another person was playing second violin. And I had heard that this was one of Deb's favorite pieces, and it was an unfortunate situation that the person who was playing second violin had to go home due to illness. However, I was asked to play second violin, and it was one of the most special experiences that I had as a camper, playing this piece. And the entire week we were thinking, we didn't even coach with you, but our focus was how are we going to play this piece so that we can make Deb happy, so that we can make Deb cry. So no pressure. The camera will be not trained on you to see your emotional state. However, we are going to play for you the slow movement of Mozart Dissonant String Quartet K465. Okay.
have a dance party here.
Hi, I'm Emma. I'm Deb's daughter. And the other night I came into town and we went out, and Mom picked me up at the airport and we went out to dinner, and the Temptations came on. And Mom was like, oh man, one of these days we're gonna have that dance party. and you make the playlist, Emma, and Lauren's gonna be in charge of the music. Lauren, who's my stepbrother Bill's son.
Who's over there?
Who's over there? Hey Lauren, should we have a dance party? So you all may not know this, but there's one thing that my mom loves as much or maybe more than chamber music, and it is dancing. So
60s rock and roll.
that's what we're gonna do.
Oh my God!